Hey everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be my Game Week 6 team selection. And as you guys know with the transfer plans previously outlined, the idea of course is to go towards Trippier this week. However, of course, I think the first discussion to make is actually why I'm going for Trippier. Because I can see a lot of managers have actually intentionally avoided Trippier, mostly because they actually want to create a easy route towards Salah. And for me, I've actually decided to go against that sort of path, simply because I do want to capture the immediate upside of going for Trippier. And it really just comes down to the first thing being Salah's fixtures. And in my opinion, the overreaction on the Manchester United midfielders. Because when we look at, let's say, Salah's fixtures, yes, of course, he has not blanked, I don't think, once this season, not even in the preseason, really. But of course, we know that Salah is capable of blanking. And the reality is, of course, the next three fixtures are still very tough for him. So I find it very hard to see this as an opportunity, for example, to let's say take a hit for Salah in my position, because I only have one free transfer this week, and it doesn't make sense for me to take a -4 to just go in towards the Salah game versus West Ham at home, which is of course is a nice game. But actually after that, in terms of game weeks, let's say 7, 8, those aren't exactly good for Salah either. So when you look at Salah's fixtures, I do think the real fixture run for Liverpool starts at game week 9. And so that's the opportunity when I'll probably have the chance to reconsider whether I want to go towards Salah. And I can make that decision then because I don't see myself making too many transfers that will stop me from going Salah at that juncture. And for now, of course, I get to play two good home fixtures for United on paper. And then, of course, at least a very good away game versus Burnley at home, which is obviously versus Burnley, which is going to be this fixture here in Game Week 6. So that's the initial sort of discussion about why I have intentionally not gone towards Salah in the short term. And for that reason, because I have money in the bank, I think this opportunity means that I can either go from Gusto or Chilwell to Trippier. The reason why I'm not going for something like Saliba to Trippier, despite Saliba having bad games outside of that Bournemouth game in Game Week 7, and then having his next best game in Game Week 10, is the simple fact that Saliba is perfect as someone who is not wildcarding, right? If I don't plan a Game Week 8 wildcard, and I don't plan a Game Week 10 wildcard, then I can actually keep Saliba for this perfect fixture in Game Week 10, and a great run after that too. So that's why I see myself keeping Saliba in my team, because I'm not really planning a wild card in the short term. With that in mind, Chilwell or Gusto are the players out, and I'll probably rehash the Chilwell discussion for the purpose of this team selection video too. So at this moment in time, we know that Chilwell is someone who has either played left wing and started there, either played maybe 80 minutes or 60 minutes, something around that range, but he's probably going to be an early substitute because we're also seeing a lot more depth coming back to this Chelsea team. Not only do they have Sterling, who is semi-nailed, I would say he's probably the most nailed attacker for the time being. At least we've seen, for example, earlier Jackson substitutions. We've seen Mudryk, for example, come in and actually be rested, rotated, etc. But Madueke is actually probably close to coming back. He's in training. You have Mudryk, of course, who got the start in the previous match, and then Chilwell, of course, who's actually played a game as well. Cole Palmer, who came in on the right-hand side, actually shifted Sterling towards the left-hand side. So that's another thing to think about. Whether Cole Palmer can actually play on the left is probably another question, but for the time being, we're actually struggling to see that Chilwell gets consistent minutes as a left winger. And then obviously the question becomes, can Chilwell just simply default back to his natural position as a left back? And then the question I would probably ask is, without James being around, we haven't really seen so far that Pochettino is comfortable with starting a left back of, let's say, Chilwell and a right back of Gusto together. And even as a substitute, I would say, obviously, look, game state is very important. Bournemouth were chasing, Chelsea were away from home. But Chilwell really didn't improve the quality of the team. I think the shape, of course, was also, in a sense, ripped apart because of how lopsided Chelsea were, right? Pochettino complained about the fact that his fullbacks were too high up, too advanced, and actually leaving a lot of space in behind for Bournemouth to counter. That could be a criticism to actually any of the fullbacks, right? Because if you actually look at the positioning that Colwill took up in that game, he took up a lot of center forward type positions in the center. As far as Chilwell, he was also incredibly advanced, effectively playing almost like a left midfield. And then when you look at someone like Gusto, I don't think he was actually, for example, inverting too much, but more so he was playing out wide at times, maybe even taking positions that you could argue Sterling would have wanted to move into. So I think it's not directed specifically at any player, a general criticism that Pochettino outlined, but I thought that Bournemouth actually had the most of their chances really when Chilwell came on the field. Not necessarily in terms of high quality chances, but just in terms of how many opportunities they actually had to hit Chelsea on the break and actually sort of create attacks from the wing position. So That's the interesting thing. And so for that reason, I actually think I'd be quite worried to see, let's say, Chilwell plus Gusto, and I don't have too much confidence in that. So I have to sort of make a decision between Chilwell or Gusto. I think Gusto will actually last me towards, let's say, game week 8, because the whole idea with Gusto, right, is with the added news that Pochettino gave a couple of weeks ago, is that Reece James is probably scheduled to come back into the team after game week 9 or around game week 9, right? That international break is probably where he gets additional rest, gets a little bit of match fitness somehow, and then actually maybe gets consistent starts after that. So with Chelsea too, when you look at the defensive fixtures, actually they're still quite good. The offensive fixtures are not particularly great. They have a few away games, yes, of course, versus weaker teams, but we're starting to see that the defensive fixtures are okay for Chelsea, but offense is starting to dip a lot more. I don't really have a problem keeping Sterling in my team. For the time being, I don't think he's a problem because he's quite nailed. I have issues actually within, let's say, keeping a Chilwell because I have the upside and the opportunity to move into that upside by going to a Newcastle defender. So that's the first topic of discussion for me, closed. And the reason why I'm actually going out of Chilwell is because I think intuitively as well, you want to have more money in the bank so that you can actually make better moves. If I go from Gusto to Trippier, that sort of closes the money I have in the bank. And for example, future moves like, let's say, I don't know, maybe a Sterling to Son are even much more complicated. Or for example, even simply upgrading Sterling to someone else become much more complicated. So that's why I sort of wanted to avoid going from Gusto to Trippier. I will be giving Gusto the start this week as a result of that, and Chilwell will have to leave the team. As I said, because I'm not planning to wildcard, Saliba stays as well. So that's sort of the initial discussion. And the reason why we, of course, see so much upside for Newcastle is actually over the next 2 fixtures, Newcastle have fantastic clean sheet opportunities. And of course, with Chilwell, you actually, we're hoping for a lot of great attacking upside, but really with the lack of minutes that he has, it's Trippier that you probably want to go into, because now that Trippier has easier fixtures, that should mean more set pieces, more ability to actually create an open play from himself with his great crosses, and in general, more dominance, right? So for example, if you own someone like Schär, who hasn't taken many shots so far, he should be taking more shots now. If you look at someone like Botman, who might be able to get on the end of set piece chances, he should be getting on more of those now. And who's creating most of these chances? It's Trippier. So I do really like Trippier for this run. The next 2 fixtures are perfect. Clean sheets are there as well in terms of the odds being much better than, for example, many other teams within the league. And Chelsea's defense really weren't a team that I would be so confident in, right? It really was actually a Robert Sanchez masterclass that actually saved Chelsea from getting or losing their clean sheet versus Bournemouth. Ouattara, for example, had a great opportunity in the first half. And then secondly, you also had Bournemouth just completely collapse on this Chelsea team within the last 10 to 20 minutes. I think the substitutes didn't really help the Chelsea team. And in fact, they actually looked worse, as I said. So for this reason, in terms of defense this week, I'm actually going to be lining up with Pickford. I have been avoiding Pickford transfers, but also when you actually look at, let's say, some of the competing transfers, only Leno has done well so far with that great game versus Luton Town, but also Pickford has Luton Town at home coming up next. So if we all see this opportunity as a golden fixture to get a clean sheet magically, then Pickford has this coming up very soon in Game Week 7. And then Game Week 8 also is a good fixture on paper. I thought Pickford and actually this Everton team were very, very good and very defensively resolute versus this Arsenal team too at home. So that's a nice little added bonus that we do have some good home fixtures coming up for Pickford. And I'm not too, for example, confident in moving to any of the other keepers immediately. So with Flecken immediately, I would say he's probably my favorite keeper now. But still, you're looking at Everton at home. And then obviously Nottingham Forest, but is there that much upside with him going for a keeper? Because when you look at a great fixture like Leno on paper, I mean, it's 6 points. And so the upside of a keeper isn't really going to be the 12 points that Leno got. That is so rare and so hard to come by compared to, let's say, when you make better transfers in the attack or even in the defense when you have an attacking fullback. So I'm not going to go for a keeper transfer. Pickford will stay for the time being. And then actually, I will be actually lining up with Gusto for the same reason that I discussed why Chilwell is going out. I'm hoping to get Gusto starts for the next 3 games if I need to actually call him up to actually start my team. Trippier will obviously join the team as a transfer. That's my 1 free transfer used. And then I will actually be playing alongside Trippier Estupiñán. Now, Estupiñán did actually start the game in the Europa League match, but I'm hoping that with rest that he got in the United game, that he can probably start back-to-back and play this fixture here versus Bournemouth at home. There is, of course, going to be a concern naturally that Lamptey will be someone who might be called upon. But the way I see it too is, let's say if I move out of Chilwell, at the very least, Arsenal have the same clean sheet odds this week or very, very close towards this Arsenal team. Because if anything, actually, Arsenal's defensive numbers have improved and a lot of team models are actually suggesting that Arsenal have improved as a defense. And I think the big reason why we can say that is because of the Declan Rice transfer. But also, now that we're seeing that Raya has actually come into the team, I would say Raya is a huge upgrade in terms of Ramsdale. Both in terms of passing out of the back, how many mistakes he actually conducts, and then also on top of that, simply his shot stopping quality. when you look at advanced stats in the previous year, you'll see that there was a huge gulf between Raya and Ramsdale. Now, you can argue that's 1 year of sample size and it's not enough, but I also think that ultimately that's actually all we've gotten from Ramsdale so far in his career, because he's been in really poor teams in the past. And we've had 2 good seasons of quality data from Raya suggesting he's a good keeper. So Arsenal defense is, even more of a reason why I want to own, because Raya's now in the team. So that's going to be my team. And obviously now Saliba on the bench. As far as the midfield, the same exact midfield that I've been rocking with for a few weeks that have actually completely unimpressed me. But in terms of actually, fixtures ahead, I still think they're worth keeping. And as I said, because I can't go to Salah too easily, and because Salah still has 3 of his worst fixtures on paper, I would like to take this opportunity to still keep my Man United midfielders. And you could call me being stubborn, but I also think that when you actually pick FPL picks, you're not looking for them to bang every single week. That's why I've kept Sterling. I've gotten lucky with Sterling. I've also gotten unlucky with Sterling. And it's the same thing with many other assets. A lot of us could be bringing in, for example, someone like Julian Alvarez this week, but he could also blank. And that's fine. That's how FPL is. You can't actually make sure you get every outcome correct. And when you have good fixtures, unless there's this crazy situation suggesting that these Man United midfielders cannot attack, then maybe we can reconsider. But, when you look at the Bayern Munich game, still capable of creating, both Fernandes and Rashford getting assists. And as I've been saying so far, Brighton's a very tough fixture. Arsenal's a very tough fixture. They've come away from those 2 fixtures, and you're now looking and staring ahead at really good fixtures, with the exception, of course, that City game in Game Week 10. So I am planning to keep these Man United fielders in terms of Bruno Fernandes and also Rashford, and then I'm going to be keeping Saka, of course. I could even be extending towards another attacking midfielder in Odegaard, going back to Odegaard, which I wanted to go for in Game Week 1, by around Game Week 10, because around that opportunity, you have a good run for Arsenal coming up again. So he's sort of on the radar as well. Sterling is going to be a keep just to see out these 3 fixtures. Fulham have been a very poor defense so far, so hoping to target that game first before I sort of part ways with Sterling. And then on Game Week 8, I can reconsider, moving away from Sterling on that fixture. That's sort of how I see my team going forwards. As far as that 5th midfielder, of course, it's Mbeumo. Don't think there's really much to really discuss about him. He is obviously someone that I have said so far looks like a season keeper up until Tony comes back. And, he very well might not come back to this. And in terms of the 4 this week, I'm actually going with Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. If you want to talk about captaincy, I think there's absolutely no discussion whatsoever. It's going to be a Haaland captaincy. Now, of course, Alvarez has been doing incredibly well in the Champions League, for example, outdoing Haaland. But still, the chances are mostly falling towards Erling Haaland. He hasn't taken these opportunities in the last 2 fixtures. But I think the fact that those opportunities are there suggests that they will continue to be there. And it's only a matter of time before we get another super Erling Haaland haul. And when you look at, let's say, single game week fixtures, and for example, some managers actually going for a triple captain on game week 4, I think this is a great opportunity too. Another home fixture versus another very, very weak defense. Why not take this opportunity? Yes, of course, Turner has been quite good in terms of his shot stopping so far, but this is Man City, right? A lot of chances were still made by this Burnley team, particularly, with their ability to actually use a winger like Kelly Osho, for example. He actually made a lot of great runs on the left-hand side. I can see Doku potentially even repeating that. And with Bernardo Silva out, you probably have much more guarantees of the attacking minutes of these City players. I think this is a great week to actually target the City's attack. If you had, let's say, the opportunity to move midfielders, I do think some interesting picks would be, for example, Foden and Eze. And this is the week to target some really, really good home fixtures for some players. And this is a good little short-term punt opportunity, particularly if you actually have a Game Week 8 wildcard or a Game Week 10 wildcard in mind. For me, as I said, I'm playing the long game. I think my team's a little bit more set up. I've been ahead of other managers with the Alvarez transfer and very fortunate to be in this position. So I do think that I see it as an opportunity to sort of play ahead, not take the wild card right now, maybe wait for an opportunity where it's more needed, right? Where maybe injuries miraculously pile up for me, or that blank game week opportunity later down the line where I can wild card again. So that's my opinion on Game Week 6. I am going Chilwell to Trippier. The only thing that would really convince me towards going from Gusto to Trippier is if I am absolutely certain that Chilwell will start. And that will be based on the press conference news tomorrow. But I have very, very little faith that Pochettino will confirm anything of the sort. And for the time being, this is going to be my team. So I'll see you guys in the next week, and I hope you guys have a wonderful game week ahead. If you guys could actually smash the like button, that would be absolutely fantastic. If we could break 400 likes, that would be a record for the channel. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. Feel free to comment below what your transfers are for this week, and I'll see you guys on the live stream.